In the heart of West Africa, a story was unfolding that the world never expected. A young soldier, barely in his 30s, stood up against centuries of exploitation, corruption, and foreign dominance. His name? Ibrahim Traoré. Today, he is known as the youngest president in Africa. But his journey to power is not just politics. It's a story of courage, rebellion, and the unshakable belief that youth can change the destiny of a nation. Burkina Faso, a country often ignored on the world map, faced poverty, terrorism, and betrayal from its own leaders. People had lost hope. But when everyone thought nothing would change, one man decided to rewrite history, not with speeches from luxury offices, but with the determination of a soldier who came from the people and stood for the people. This is not just about Ibrahim Traoré. This is about the power of young blood, the fire of patriotism, and the reminder that no empire is too strong when the people rise. His journey begins here. Ibrahim Traoré was born on March 14, 1988, in Bondokui, a small town in western Burkina Faso. He was not born into power, luxury, or wealth. His family lived a simple life, rooted in discipline and hard work. From a very young age, Ibrahim showed signs of leadership. He was quiet but observant. Not the kind of child who dreamed of toys, but the kind who dreamed of justice. At school, he was brilliant. His classmates respected him not only for his intelligence, but also for his sense of fairness. Whenever there was a fight or conflict among students, Ibrahim was the one who stepped in to calm things down. He was young, but his character carried the weight of a man destined for responsibility. Despite poverty and limited opportunities, he worked hard in education. His dream was not just to build a better life for himself, but to serve his nation. That passion for serving led him to the military. To him, wearing the uniform was not just about fighting wars. It was about protecting his people from fear, injustice, and oppression. No one knew then that this young boy from Bondokui would grow up to shake the political foundations of Africa. His early life was simple, but it built the foundation for the fire that was about to come. After finishing his basic education, Ibrahim Traoré made a life-changing decision. He joined the army. For him, this was not just a profession. It was a mission to defend his homeland, to protect his people, and to restore pride in a country that was suffering under corruption and insecurity. In 2006, he entered the military academy in Burkina Faso. From the very beginning, his discipline stood out. While many cadets were only focused on ranks and promotions, Ibrahim was different. He carried himself with humility, but his dedication and sharp mind made him a natural leader. He was not the loudest voice in the room, but whenever he spoke, people listened. Soon, he became known for his courage in the field. During training missions and later in real battles against terrorist groups in the Sahel region, Ibrahim proved himself as a fearless soldier. He often put his own safety at risk to protect his comrades. His soldiers trusted him because he never asked them to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. By the time he became an artillery officer, he had already earned deep respect within the army. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a thinker. He studied military strategy, history, and global politics, always looking for ways to strengthen his country. His vision was clear. Burkina Faso could not depend forever on foreign powers to solve its problems. The country needed strong, independent leadership. But there was one thing that shaped him even more than the battlefield: his connection with ordinary people. Whenever he returned from missions, he spent time in villages, speaking with farmers, elders, and youth. He listened to their struggles, lack of security, lack of opportunities, and the feeling of being abandoned by their own government. These voices stayed with him and fueled his determination. Step by step, Ibrahim was no longer just a soldier. He was becoming the voice of a new generation of Burkinabe who wanted change. And though he did not seek power, destiny was quietly preparing him for a role that would shock the world. As the years passed, Burkina Faso fell deeper into crisis. The land of proud warriors was now struggling under the weight of terrorism, poverty, and political corruption. Villages were burning, families were fleeing, and thousands of innocent lives were being lost. The people cried for help, but their voices were ignored by those in power. The government kept making promises of security, promises of development, promises of peace. But to the common man, nothing changed. Soldiers were underpaid and under-equipped, while politicians lived in luxury. Foreign powers came and went, giving aid with one hand and taking resources with the other. The nation's dignity was slowly being sold, piece by piece. Ibrahim Traoré watched all of this with a heavy heart. He had dedicated his life to defending the country. Yet he could see that the real battle was not just against terrorists. It was against a corrupt system that refused to change. His comrades in the army shared the same frustration. They were tired of risking their lives while their leaders sat comfortably in offices far away from the front lines. Every time Ibrahim returned from a mission, he saw the suffering of ordinary people. Children who could not go to school, farmers who abandoned their fields, women who had lost their families. The cries of the people haunted him. Deep inside, he began to ask himself, if we, the soldiers of this nation, do not stand for our people, then who will? Slowly, whispers of change began to spread within the army. Young officers, inspired by Ibrahim's courage and honesty, started to gather around him. They spoke about freedom, about dignity, about reclaiming Burkina Faso's future. Ibrahim never sought to be a hero, but his character naturally drew people to him. He was not driven by greed or power. He was driven by the belief that his country deserved better. By 2022, the frustration reached its breaking point. The old leadership had lost the trust of both the people and the army. Villages kept falling into the hands of terrorists, while the government looked away. Soldiers had enough. And among them stood Ibrahim Traoré, the young captain who carried not only the anger of his generation, but also the hope of a nation. The tension in Burkina Faso reached its peak in late 2022. Fear, anger, and disappointment had filled every corner of the nation. Soldiers were tired of burying their brothers. Families were tired of fleeing their homes. And the people were tired of waiting for promises that never came true. Something had to change. On the night of September 30th, 2022, the silence of the capital city was broken. Heavy trucks rolled through the streets, filled with young soldiers determined to take back their country. Their leader was none other than Captain Ibrahim Traoré, just 34 years old, but with the courage and vision of a man twice his age. The mission was clear. Remove the corrupt leadership and give power back to the people. The presidential palace, guarded and surrounded, became the center of the storm. Shots echoed in the night sky. The people of Ouagadougou woke up to chaos, but also to hope. Unlike other men who fought for power, Ibrahim did not come with greed in his heart. He came with fire in his eyes and a promise in his soul. Standing tall in his military uniform, he addressed his soldiers. We do this not for ourselves, but for Burkina Faso, for every farmer, every mother, every child who deserves to live without fear. His words ignited courage in every man standing beside him. By morning, the old regime had fallen. The once powerful president, who had lost the trust of his people and army, was gone. And in his place, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stood as the new leader of Burkina Faso. The news spread like wildfire. Across villages and towns, people danced in the streets. They raised his picture, chanted his name, and celebrated the rise of a leader who looked like them, spoke like them, and fought for them. For the first time in years, the people felt a sense of hope. But Ibrahim knew this was just the beginning. The coup was not the final victory. It was only the opening chapter of a much harder battle rebuilding the nation, restoring security and protecting sovereignty. As he stood before the nation for the first time as president, Ibrahim Traoré declared boldly, Burkina Faso will no longer bow to foreign interests. Our land, our people, our future belong to us. With these words, a new chapter in Burkina Faso's history began. The young soldier had become the youngest president in the world, a symbol of courage, defiance, and hope. The world watched in shock as Burkina Faso's youngest leader, Ibrahim Traoré, stepped into power. He was only 34, yet his words shook the palaces of Europe and the offices of Washington. Unlike the leaders before him, Ibrahim did not bow his head to foreign powers. He lifted it high and declared, "Burkina Faso will stand on its own feet. We will no longer be slaves in our own land." From the very first day, Ibrahim made it clear, the days of foreign exploitation were over. For decades, France had enjoyed control over the country's gold, resources, and even its military operations. French soldiers roamed the land freely, while the people of Burkina Faso remained poor and insecure. But Ibrahim, with fire in his voice, told the world, "If you claim to protect us, why are our villages still burning? If you call yourself our ally, why are our children still dying? We do not need empty promises. We need our sovereignty." The young leader took bold steps that no one expected. He ordered French troops to leave Burkina Faso. The bases that once symbolized foreign power were shut down, their flags lowered, their influence cut off. For the first time in decades, the people felt that their nation was truly theirs again. This decision shocked Western capitals. They tried to pressure him with threats, sanctions, and propaganda. But Ibrahim did not flinch. He looked into the cameras and spoke with a thunderous voice. "We are poor, yes, but we are not weak. We would rather die standing than live forever on our knees." These words spread across Africa like wildfire. From Mali to Niger, from Senegal to Ghana, young Africans cheered his courage. Ibrahim had become more than a president. He was now a symbol of African resistance. A hero who dared to say no to powers that had ruled over them for centuries. But this defiance came with a price. The West tried to isolate Burkina Faso, cutting off aid, trade, and international support. Yet, instead of breaking, Ibrahim turned to his neighbors. He reached out to Mali and Niger, who were also led by young military leaders defying France. Together, they formed an alliance called the Alliance of Sahel States, AES, a powerful pact of solidarity, promising to defend each other against terrorism and foreign interference. For the first time in modern history, 3 African nations stood united, not under the flag of a colonial power, but under their own vision of freedom. Ibrahim stood before the people and declared, "They think we are too small to rise. They think we are too poor to resist. But they forget that a people united, a people willing to sacrifice, is stronger than any army or empire." The streets of Ouagadougou roared with chants of his name. His speeches inspired not just his citizens, but millions of Africans who had long felt voiceless. In him, they saw a reflection of their own struggles, their own hopes, and their own dreams. The story of Ibrahim Traoré is not just about a soldier who became president. It is about a dream that was buried under centuries of chains, exploitation, and fear, and finally awakened by the courage of one man. When Ibrahim rose to power, many doubted him. They said he was too young, too inexperienced, too idealistic to lead. But Ibrahim carried something far greater than political experience. He carried the spirit of resistance, the fire of a generation that refused to bow down. He walked into history not as a puppet of foreign masters, but as the voice of millions who had been silenced for too long. His speeches shook the ground beneath the feet of those who thought Africa would forever remain divided and weak. He told his people, "Our chains were not broken by chance. They were broken by choice. The choice to rise, the choice to fight, the choice to live free or die trying." The world watched as Ibrahim became a symbol not just for Burkina Faso, but for an entire continent. In Mali, in Niger, in Senegal, in Congo, young Africans shouted his name. They painted murals of him, carried his photos in rallies, and whispered his words like prayers. Dignity is not negotiable. But Ibrahim knew something deeper, that revolutions do not succeed by speeches alone. They succeed when the people believe in themselves, when they no longer wait for saviors, but become the saviors of their own destiny. That is why he told the youth, "Do not look to Paris, do not look to Washington, do not look to Moscow or Beijing. Look into the mirror. The liberator of Africa is you." For the people of Burkina Faso, every action he took was a spark of hope. Schools were rebuilt, farmers were empowered, and the army began to defend villages instead of foreign interests. It was not easy. There were threats, blockades, and sabotage from the outside. But Ibrahim's message was clear. We may not win tomorrow. We may not win next year. But the seeds of freedom we plant today will one day grow into a forest no one can cut down. And so his name became more than a name. It became a movement that told Africa, you are not poor, you are rich in spirit, rich in land, rich in culture. You only need leaders who believe in you. History will remember him not just as the youngest president of Burkina Faso, but as the spark that reignited the African dream. The dream of unity, the dream of dignity, the dream of a continent standing tall, unchained, and unbroken. One day, Ibrahim said, Africa will no longer be a story of suffering. It will be a story of victory. And when that day comes, remember it started here. It started with the people who refused to kneel. And so the legacy of Ibrahim Traoré lives on not just in the pages of history, but in the beating hearts of millions who now dare to dream of a free Africa. This was not just the story of a man. It was the story of a continent rediscovering its soul. From the dusty streets of Burkina Faso to the restless hearts of African youth, Ibrahim Traoré became more than a leader. He became a symbol of what is possible when courage defeats fear. He reminded us that true power does not come from weapons or wealth, but from dignity, unity, and the unbreakable will of the people. His voice carried across Africa, whispering a timeless truth. Freedom is never given. It is taken. And so, as this series ends, one question remains for all of us, not just in Africa, but across the world. Will we accept chains or will we rise to break them? Because Ibrahim's story is not finished. It lives on in every young person who dares to dream of justice, in every village that refuses to bow, and in every nation that chooses dignity over submission. This is not the end. This is the beginning of a new chapter in the struggle for freedom. If this story inspired you, don't let it stop here. Share it with your friends, spread the message, and keep the spirit alive. And if you want to hear more powerful stories of courage, revolution, and leaders who changed history, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss the next story. Together, let's keep the flame of freedom burning.